Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, Caitlin. It's
Hey,
been quite the week.
it has very much. As I was telling you last night when we were deciding to do today, because today is an extremely busy day for me. Today's my 12th wedding anniversary. Um, yeah, that like 6 months of news happened in 1 week.
That's a fair statement. I'd agree with that. Um, I think we should probably skip the details. Everybody knows it by now. What are your feelings on it? How do you feel about the assassination attempt?
So, can I first tell you like how this happened? So last week I was in Vermont. And I think I posted about this, but it was a pretty wild weekend for me. I had a friend who decided to act super stupid. Again, like my group of friends are 35 now. So, like, we're not really doing stupid stuff anymore because we're adults, right? Like, okay. He decided to do something very stupid. And I, in Vermont, was super lame and had to bring my laptop and do homework the entire time. And I get called
Wait,
because
time it.
my
Well, hang on, time it. You can't say he did something super stupid and not say what the stupid thing
Oh,
was.
I'm getting there. I'm getting
Okay,
there.
all right.
So I had to go to Shaw's in Vermont for like a hot second to pick up something that I needed. And I get a phone call that he's like unresponsive and needing like medical help.
Oh
And
God,
I'm the person who's certified in CPR and first aid amongst our group of
you
friends.
you got a call that your friend was hurt.
Yeah.
Okay.
He decided to take some ingestible drugs that were not great. And that should not have this like this type of reaction. Let's just say that. Okay.
Well, it depends on how much they took and what they took. I mean, if
Yeah,
it was
you're
was
correct.
it? Can I? I mean, you're not telling us who it was, so it's fine. I'm not.
He took an edible, but he took four of them at the same time.
Four of them, and we don't know what the
Yeah.
strength of those edibles were.
We found out later when we found the tin, but yeah,
Were they
I
fought?
haven't done edibles and I admittedly, guys, I again am a real human person, and I have not done that in a long time because I am a fully functioning adult. And
Four would be four, even if they were 5 milligrams each, which is about as low as you get. You know, you take one of those, you'll feel pretty good, and you'll have a good night's sleep. And a lot of people use them for sleep, like the gummies. You
yeah,
take 10, you take two or one that's 10. All right, you're gonna have some fun. You take twice that amount to 20 milligrams at minimum. Yeah, you could freak out. I mean, you're
yeah.
not gonna
So
die. Like, there's nothing physical that's gonna happen to you, but you could
you're in
totally.
for a bad time,
Yeah.
and people probably don't understand what's happening to you. And that's what happened. And so I get called when this is happening. FYI, I have a digital watch like that I use to like do like for exercise, and it's not an Apple Watch. I have a Garmin, and at that time, I get the ping that Donald Trump has been shot at.
Oof.
Um, and then my best friend, who is not even a conservative, she leans more libertarian. Probably libertarian left leaning, but she's more socially conservative coded, I guess, um, if you could describe it that way. Texts me and goes, "Oh my god," and I'm like pulling into seeing this person on the ground. FYI.
Yeah.
So at that time, like I don't even really recognize what's going on yet, and am helping my friend who decided to be an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I responded to the emergency. He is okay.
Yeah, he's fine. They're fine. I mean,
I
you're not
we
gonna die if you could have a 200 milligram horrible trip on you have THC weed gummy. You're not gonna die. You're gonna have a really bad time, but you're not.
That's basically what
Yeah.
happened. I ensured that whatever first aid response, we pumped his, quote unquote, pumped his system with a bunch of fluids, and he was back at it in about 3 hours. So he's okay. But Donald Trump got shot at. And at that point, my weekend was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
When I saw the coverage of it, it was kind of nuts, right? Like it is very surreal. I mean, first of all, it is very surreal that a nominee for the president, the office of the president of the United States, he's already been president once, so he does have Secret Service detail, gets shot at in the year 2024. And to be quite honest, if he had not turned his head, he would have been dead.
I have no hesitation. I was telling my wife this the other day because we were talking about it, and I'm going to get into some of the stuff we were talking about, personally, that it was through family, Facebook friends, things like that. It is a miracle. Yeah. And I don't mean that in the I'm not saying that figuratively. Literally, it is a I won't use it. It is a miracle. It's a freaking miracle. It is a miracle that he survived that. And thank God that he did. I cannot imagine the world and the country we would have right now 6 days later had he been killed.
I think that would have been close to, Jeff, like there's defining events like in your life, right? Mm-hmm. I think the 2000 election for me was a defining event that I clearly remember, like Al Gore and Bush, Supreme Court. Like I actually clearly remember that.
Not for me, but yeah. Okay.
This was like around the time that my grandparents died. So like I clearly remember these events. 9/11 was a huge event in my life. That would be watching that as a 7th grader was pretty horrifying. And we watched the entire thing, and it was very much going forward. This is who I am as a person, right? These are my sets of beliefs that I truly do believe in. And I've actually held on to those beliefs since then. Like I've always been conservative leaning, even as a kid. Yep. Growing up in a conservative family, and 9/11 really cemented a lot of that for me.
100%. Yep.
The 2008, financial crisis, that was pretty much a defining moment. I think Donald Trump winning in 2016 was a defining moment in my life. If he had been shot and killed last weekend, that would have been a defining moment in American history. Yeah. And he turned his head. He turned his head. He's lucky to be alive. And it is, without going into like kind of everything about it, like I don't think that we need to have a discussion, Secret Service stuff or whatever, because it's just such a crazy situation that like there are a lot of unanswered questions about why this was able to happen. And I think that those are very important questions. It is flabbergasting to me as a tax-paying American that the Biden administration didn't immediately come out and say, we are going to do a full huge investigation similar to the one that the Kennedy assassination had that involved the Supreme Court, Congress, other areas of the executive branch. That didn't happen. What the Democrats have been focusing on since that assassination attempt happened is their infighting, which is despicable to me. This took the forefront of an assassination attempt on the Republican nominee for the office of the presidency. So that is my one big thing on this, is that the Democrats decided to put their drama to the forefront instead of calling for an all federal government approach to an investigation on why this happened. We should have the Inspector General of like a lot of things of those things will give us a report on like the failures that happened in the situation. We should have more than that.
I completely agree.
That's my one.
I'm with you on much of that. I'm I'm not shocked. I don't find it unbelievable that the
I
Democrats in
agree.
power, the Democrats in power have done everything they can to memory hole this as quickly as possible, and move on. Let's just move on. Like in the immediate, the day after, or I should say that day, or no, the day after, I was greeted in my several social media feeds to the resist libs and the left talking about don't lecture us about political rhetoric, as if
Okay.
like
Right.
so we our last episode 114 prior to this, the title was was it democracy something, wait, democracy's not going anywhere, calm down, or something like democracy's not in peril, it's going to be fine. And literally in capital letters, calm down. I am.
They can't, at this point, they can't. Let's be real, okay? Like, asking Democrats to calm down their rhetoric, like, trust me, like, I'm on the same page about Donald Trump's past rhetoric. Like, we agree, okay? Like, sometimes he needed to tone it down, but at the same time, you don't see a Republican going into a congressional baseball field trying to shoot up Democratic senators and congressmen.
Erickson.
This happened.
Yep.
And that is still memory hold.
Eric Erickson said it really well,
I'm the one on January 6th, my fucking birthday, that called for police to arrest all rioters and for Donald Trump to tone it down.
I would have had
my birthday.
Let me tell you something. I would have had them opening fire against anybody who riots, and that goes both ways. I've said this many, many times before.
I hate rioting.
If you riot, whether it's in a major metropolitan area or on the Capitol, you are committing mob-like acts. You need to be treated like the mob, like they did 100 years ago, and. I think or was it Mayor Daley back in Chicago in '68? Will shoot to maim. No, not shoot to kill, but shoot to maim. Like, you can't do that. That's it. I mean, if you're going to riot. But we've gotten soft on that. So
it's right. So like for the week previously, like Biden is like basically when you call Donald Trump Hitler, when you call Donald Trump a dictator, and you take out of context things that he says. Like he said on day one, it's going to be like, I'm going to be like a dictator writing executive orders to fix the border and all this other stuff. That's what he meant by the statement. It doesn't mean that he's going to be an actual dictator. It is just a phrase. So when you all literally run on that, like he is going to be a fascist dictator when we already know that he wasn't the first time around. It is hyperbolic in a lot of ways. Okay. Like you're pushing this and us asking you to calm it down. And you argued that they shouldn't. Okay, like that's what it's like. You're trying to. It is so frustrating sometimes. Well, no, it's always frustrating with liberals. Let's be real, because they just don't live in the same reality that we do. Like here I am on this podcast saying that after the assassination attempt happened to Donald Trump, I expected liberals to tone down the rhetoric. They did for 24 hours and they were back at it. I expect the Biden administration to call for a all federal government approach to an investigation into how this assassination attempt happened has not begun. No. What did they do? They put their drama to the forefront and they're trying to memory hold that this happened. Yep. You have Biden going out twice saying that, political violence is not right. Good for you, dude. Like, we don't even think you know what you're doing right now. But
that took forever, that statement, to come out the night of.
George W. Bush had a faster response to the assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life. Barack Obama had a faster response to the assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life than the current White House. You want to know why? They're fucking fighting in probably the West Wing about Biden's polling numbers in Michigan. And considering the polling that came out this morning that went from Donald Trump +3 in Michigan, or Biden -3 in Michigan to -7. Yeah, I can see why you all are currently hitting the fan
So,
as a
well, there's a few things I want to tease out on what you mentioned. It lasted. I would say what was remarkable to me is like every elected official came out with varying degrees of calls for lack of political violence. You know, Ayanna Pressley of all people basically did an all lives matter thing, which is ironic. Mike Conley, state rep out of Cambridge, socialist, actually had the best one of the local politicians. Like, mention Trump by name. Like, a lot of them couldn't. Like, I don't think Maura Healey didn't mention Trump by, like, say, have the words T or letters TRUMP.
She's so despicable.
Right. So, I mean, that was across the board, for the, very weak statements, disavowing political violence, this or that. And I think that because, one, it was very clear to me in the immediate aftermath that many, many people, smart ones, didn't say it, but were extremely upset that the assassination attempt was not successful. You can tell that because they were either A, quiet, didn't say a word, or B, deflected, or C, diminished, forced, compelled as part of their duties to say something, but it was watered down. Mike Conley, again, it was a sincere one. I don't think he believes in political violence and was sincere in his. That's why it was a good statement.
There's a lot of left-leaning socialists that really don't. Like, they're more Trotsky than they are Lenin. I mean, it is.
So
I will have to say, let me be clear. There were a lot of Democrats that came out and said that this is wrong, and they did so appropriately. So I'm going to give a very humanistic props to them. I think Josh Shapiro handled it the best out of the governor of Pennsylvania currently right now. He handled it in a very human way. It wasn't partisan. He was very straightforward. And he seemed very concerned about the citizens of Pennsylvania that were deeply affected by this. Somebody died in the crowd. Yeah. A father who, when it happened, shielded his wife and his daughter. So yes, like, the thing is it is now true. Donald Trump took a bullet, got shot at for democracy. It's like, you can't. Man died in the crowd, and we don't have a lot of answers right now. We're probably not going to get a lot of answers because the Biden administration's response to this has been so abhorrent, is really the word. It really has been despicable. And that is the reason why they're currently polling so behind Donald Trump. They cannot handle this anymore. They cannot handle the scope of the executive branch and leading that branch of the federal government. I mean, I just can't, you can't say anything other than that anymore. These people cannot handle it. If their response to an assassination attempt on the Republican nominee for the office of the presidency is to just put forward their own fucking drama within their party, then we're something's broken here. Okay? Like, that's my main, something is broken here. So going into the Republican National Convention, I do want to say that because, Jeff, you and I were Ron DeSantis people going into this primary. I'm still a huge fan of Ron DeSantis. I think he's the best governor in the country. The Republicans are united. They're united right now. They are united. The Democrats are not. Very much not. And they're not united because all of a sudden America, saw Biden's presidential debate performance, and it was at the forefront of what his physical state is. Okay. They tried to hide it for years. Okay. We've talked about that on the podcast. Jeff, you and I read liberal and left-leaning publications every single day.
Mostly.
We live in a deep blue Massachusetts. I deal with liberals on a daily basis. So whenever someone says that I live in a bubble, you are out of your mind, because I am confronted by liberalism on a daily basis. Okay, I read those left-leaning publications. They tried to hide Biden's physical state, mental state for years. We knew that he was not in a good state, and that debate clearly showed it. And so their political drama is we're still dealing with the fallout of that. That's what we're dealing with. Instead of the Democrats taking like things that are happening in the world seriously, and yes, the assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life is a big, huge event. That picture of him. I'm sorry, I'm going to keep going. That picture of him coming up with the fist and the American flag behind him, that's going in the history books.
Yeah. I am flabbergasted that
it's not the right words, right? Like you can't say
it's tough because you're right, because I can't
it's a combination of everything.
Well, the assassination attempt, I have never seen a group of people angrier after a failed assassination attempt of their political opponent. Like this has all been ratcheted up. They've doubled and tripled and quadrupled down on their current thing now. They're making fun of the bandage that was on his ear. Now there's questions about why they haven't gotten medical reports about about.
Yeah. An hour after the assassination attempt happened on Donald Trump's life, I got on Facebook and saw 3 people post this was staged.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah, it was staged. It was fake. Like the firefighter died.
Like he's dead.
Yeah, like he's dead. His kids are his kids are orphans. I mean, it's insane. It's insane. And the problem is, it's like, people want to talk about how Trump people are in a cult. It's like you're in a fucking cult if you believe that it was staged. If you openly said it was staged, you have serious problems. If you were upset that the assassin failed in their attempt, you're a bad person and you need to reevaluate your life. Because as much as I couldn't stand Barack Obama, I actually hoped nothing ever bad would happen to him, because I knew it would be so bad for this country. And it's just not not even that. It would tear this country apart, and it's not good. It's not what we do here.
It's very destabilizing, guys. If Joe Biden had an assassination attempt on his life on live TV, by the way, this happened during a rally. That is, these rallies for Donald Trump are routinely televised. This was on TV. Okay, like my friend who saw it, got the ping, saw the video, and texted me. Okay, I just don't. And this is how conservatives and liberals are just different. Immediately, I am not going to jump to the conclusion that it is staged, that is lying, that we need to have medical records, that we have. No. I'm going to care about the effect. The overall effect is going to be on our country, because that is going to be destabilizing. That is the reason why I'm a conservative. I care about our country. I don't care. Like the thing is like, yes, I think that the Biden administration is kind of hiding what his physical and mental abilities are, but I'm not going to deep dive into that, right? Like that's not it is my main concern with national security, but like at the same time, I'm not going to spend parts of my day trying to promote a conspiracy theory about that.
Well, you've got Julia Kayam, former Obama official, on Twitter today, acting as if it's just this curiosity why the Trump's medical records or medical report hasn't been released. It's like, for one, I want to be like, who the fuck are you? He doesn't know that shit. He doesn't owe anybody that. And also, since you're asking for it, big middle finger. You don't have to give him a thing. He got shot at. They're like, well, now the dialed down conspiracy, and we're seeing a lot of the dialed down conspiracy with another topic we'll get into in a second. It wasn't staged. It was shrapnel. It wasn't a bullet. As if it was like.
You have photographic evidence from Doug Gibbs of the New York Times that is not. It is not that. Yeah. Like that was released literally. The initial reports that it was okay. Like the initial report was that okay, but then that report changed because new evidence arose.
It doesn't matter. It literally
at the same time, you're hopping on this to try to what they're doing, Jeff, is trying to hop on this conspiracy theory in order to downplay the effect of the event. Right, like
downplay the severity of it. That's what they're trying.
It is severe. Yeah. It is very severe. Again, I'm going to always remember this event, like the assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life, and after that point, again, the Democrats, instead of, because they do lead the government in, a branch of government or a branch of Congress or a chamber of Congress, I'm sorry, and the executive branch right now, instead of doing an all federal government approach to the investigation of why this happened, they are, again, pushing forward their own.
It's who they are. I expect nothing less. So that is still being, a week later, we're still seeing that they're diminishing it. They're pushing it off the front page. It was staged. It was just shrapnel. The Band-Aid's too big. Oh my God. All
it hit the
and you know why? Right.
The glass from the teleprompter.
They're doing it to diminish.
And then, you see the pictures of the teleprompter and they weren't even touched.
They're diminishing this to downplay the severity of it, but also assuage their guilty conscience, because part of them wishes that this assassin was successful, because they've been brainwashed, and we'll get that into the last topic, that democracy is at stake. Like we said in the title of the last episode, democracy is not at stake. Calm down. But they can't calm down because they're in a, it's cultish. Don't ever talk about the Trump people. This is a normal podcast you're listening to, you're watching. Caitlin and I are normal. We're the barometers of normality. The people who think that Donald Trump is the second coming of Christ, the equal and opposite side of that is the people who are constantly posting Occupy Democrats propaganda that just is made up and fictitious, or listening to our last subject on this podcast, Heathe Cox Richardson. Democracy is not at stake. We're not going into a fascist authoritarian regime. Shut up. Stop it.
She's a professor, correct? So again, you've been in the New England scene of politics for a lot longer than I am. I'm originally from the red state of Kentucky, and I used to spend summers in the red state of Louisiana. You've been in this, so again, when I moved up here, moving to Massachusetts is a huge culture shock because it is a deep blue state. And I found an enclave of Republicans I really agree with here, and I am involved kind of on the state level with the Republican Party in several ways. But I don't know a lot of these liberal, advocates in the state of Massachusetts. I think that what they kind of do a lot of the times is find someone who's highly educated. Mm-hmm. They find people who are highly educated to regurgitate their political beliefs. And use their education as a method to say that they're an expert or the authority.
Yeah, it's arguing from authority. You're exactly right. That's exactly what.
And so, from what I see from her, and again, I don't really follow Heathe Cox Richardson very closely because
I unfortunately, if I go on social media, especially Facebook, I kind of have to, unless I want to start unfollowing so many Facebook friends.
You know me. I have these, liberal, middle-aged women kind of identified, weird, curly, very frayed hair, strange necklaces, boho outfits, far out there beliefs, bad shoes. I just, you know me. They just have weird
it's the core audience
that I cannot relate to or ever wear.
That is absolutely her audience, and I bring this up. We'll flip flop the topics here because we'll do it since we're going with it. Here's the thing about her. She gained some notoriety from 2016 to 2020, along with Kevin Cruz. who blocked me and maybe blocked you on Twitter.
No, I have him blocked on purpose.
Oh, well, he's Professor Half History, meaning it's like, and this one happened. They block you after you get called out. I don't respond to them. Any of Heathe Cox Richardson is blocked me on Twitter.
Cruz. Oh, is this? Oh my gosh! No. I remember exactly what happened with the drama of Kevin Cruz, and he. Let me go into this. This is years ago. If everybody knows, I have a BA in history. I love history. It is. Anyway, Kevin Cruz wrote a book on the rise of the religious right, and he stemmed this theory or hypothesis or whatever on the rise of the religious right. He basically said that what was non-existent before like the 1950s. Okay, and the problem with saying such things is that the 1950s is really not a good launching point for a hypothesis on the rise of religious beliefs in the United States through politics. Okay. He basically said that like the phrase like "in God we trust" didn't really come forward until like early 1900s or some shit, and that's not true.
No, a lot of it's not true. Yeah,
it's actually not true, and I brought that up because I've actually studied this concept before in undergrad, and I gave it to Phil Magnuson, who is a historian, an economic historian that kind of goes up against Kevin Cruz a lot, and Philip really went after him, and I blocked Kevin because he's nasty online. Like the thing is like he's not a nice human being, and when he is wrong, and again, like his entire hypothesis would be negated by a coin that existed in the late 1800s. It's like those kind of things. These hypotheses that these academics that use their education as a crutch to appeal to authority, they get it wrong a lot of the time, and they're doing it for ideological reasons. Correct. And that is correct. What is the death of expertise, according to,
another person who blocked me.
Another person who has blocked us, Tom Nichols, who also does the same thing. And, it's not a wonder why people don't believe experts anymore.
Whenever we speak about Heathe Cox Richardson, she's going to be local. She's local. She's a professor at Boston College. Cruz was a professor at Princeton. I'm going to say this first and foremost, sincerely, right hand of God. Well, hang on, but I want to say this. She has an open invitation to come on this podcast, not via Zoom. I will go to a location of her choosing. We face-to-face have a discussion about her beliefs, which we're going to get into on another episode because I'm making Caitlin do homework. You will be treated fairly and accurately. No, there will be no. You'll be treated fairly and respectfully. I've had, Governor Dukakis, MIT liberal advocates, Biden's deputy campaign director on my other podcast before. Like, you will be treated fairly and respectfully, but you will be forced to defend all the things you have said, which you're going to get into on other episodes fully. So I have to say that because if this gets to her, don't know that it will. Again, she has me blocked. Absolute truth. Here's the thing. She won't. Kevin Cruz won't engage with the other side. They won't sit down. She hasn't been active on Twitter or X for years because this is where the other side gets into it, gives her the pushback. And she wrote a book as well about the history of the Republican Party. And wouldn't you know it, just Abe Lincoln was the best, and so was Teddy Roosevelt. Oh, but as soon as those kooky conservatives who were concerned about the size and scope and degree to which federal government power is taking over the country, as soon as those folks got involved, they're bad. That's her shtick. And she became big from 2016 to 2020.
Does she think like Calvin Coolidge is like the worst human being ever?
No, it mostly gets into Reagan was bad, Bill Buckley was bad. The actual, the movement conservatism at post World War II was really the downfall of the Republican Party, and they should have just been a big government Who's the old mayor of Lindsay? Rockefeller. Rockefeller liberal Republicans. It's like, yeah, that's why the whole movement conservatives.
Okay, sorry again. I guess I don't understand the hypothesis of that, because really the small government, non hands-in role of the federal government really started with Calvin Coolidge in the 20s. This is like,
it did, but she doesn't address that. Like, that's left out. There are aspects of it. There are many aspects. You read in the Claremont Institute review of their books, their book review of her book. They panned it. It's when you leave things out, important context out, you can craft a narrative that now that the radicals have taken over, all this kind of nonsense.
The reason why I asked that question is because obviously that context is important to even creating a hypothesis close to what you've told that hers is.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, again, not to be super stereotypical, but again, you want to stay away from white liberal women with frayed hair, artisanal jewelry, clothes that look like they're made out of burlap, if they're repeating any conspiracy theories about the election, and if they think that Bill Buckley is the root of all evil. That's usually
she is right now the Pied Piper of democracy is at stake. Like, that's why, like, there's all the audience you just described is the core target, and it's like, a lot of those folks are in my life.
Really walk away. This is the reason why I probably stay away from Heathe Cox Richardson, because if she's the Piper of this type of white liberal women, woman, want to stay far miles away from that, because that would be a convention of idiocy. And
except for okay, God, I pray, like 2 hours. Professor Richardson, if you actually catch this, just 2 hours. We'll sit down. We'll go through it all. You're vastly superior intelligence. You'll humiliate me, and feel free. It'll be your chance. All your audience will clamor for you. Show that horrible, awful male Republican, that white male Republican who's boss. Please, I'm begging you. Like, it would be so much fun for me, but you won't. It's okay. And you're not that far, like, geographically. It could happen rather easily. Anyway, so there'll be more to come from this, because it's not going away. Because her big thing is Project 2025 right now,
which I still don't really know what it is.
Okay,
and
yeah. So go, but we did a episode on the meme.
I was told online that I need to Google Project 2025.
Yeah, Google it.
Google it.
It's so boomer. This is. I'm sorry, I gotta say this. What's so fucking boomer about the Democrats and liberals going Google Project 2025? You're doing it on social media, you fucking moron. You can include a link to whatever you want to do about Project 2025, and whether it's your crazy explainer or the actual site, which I've been on, I think I have it still on a tab on my computer up. You can go there anytime you want and read it. And Heathe Cox Richardson's thing and her shtick, and there's a couple other historians that have, taken this tack because they're getting money from it. Their Substacks are huge. They aggregate the day's events from liberal news sources, and then they put their own little historical spin on it and their analysis, which is bonkers, and pass it off as a newsletter, and get a lot of money for it. So, look, Project 2025, go to patreon.com/RINOpod. Our last episode, we did that. It's still up there. That's going to have some staying power where we talk about the meme on it.
I'm sorry. I'm also kind of going through Twitter right now. And the reason why I'm laughing is that Aaron Sorkin, the writer of the West Newsroom, literally just said the Democrats should choose me.
Yeah, Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney, who wanted to push grandma off a cliff, according to Joe Biden, throw y'all back in chains.
Do Democrats even know Mitt Romney's real immigration positions, because he's pretty hardcore. Yeah. He is the thing is he puts a smile on. He's your average Mormon and whatever. I mean, he lived in Massachusetts, but like Mormonism's really out of Utah, so he like reminds you of that. And he's like bland and whatever in a lot of ways, but like he's got some hardcore opinions on immigration. So. Like our like this is so silly. Look, like it's so silly.
I'm basking in the freak out right now because I'm going to, you know, I thank God that Trump was not killed last week. I mean that, and it's a miracle. And you're right. We are united as a party. I've never been the biggest fan of Donald Trump. I'm not going to fake the enthusiasm that I'm really voting for some great guy, but at this stage of the game, I'm voting for him, and I'm not holding my tongue about it.
I mean,
for a variety of reasons, but I don't think he's as good as DeSantis. That's full stop. So,
well, I mean, at the RNC, like we can talk about it. Ron DeSantis had an amazing speech. I listened to like 3 times. Like it was like, oh my God, he's just so good. Like, you know, and it was like Vivek, then Nikki, then Ron DeSantis, and Ron DeSantis like brought the house down. Like it was like so good.
Look, he's good. He's still going to be around.
I can't believe Vivek had a good speech. Like I was like, what the fuck?
Well, we're in a good position right now, and the problem is right now is late July of an election year, and I've been saying this from the beginning. I've been saying this for months now. Go back to the other episodes. I just don't think Biden will be the nominee in spite of all of it. I could be wrong.
But what if he is? I think like
what if he is? We win. If he,
like, I think that maybe the Democrats, like the thing is like Democrats are not dumb on this. Like they actually have good data people, and I kind of respect the ones that are like a little bit more real. Was it like David Shore? Like he's been sounding the alarm on this for months because the polling, the Trump's polling bump, and you can say a bump because a bump seems temporary, but the scope of him going up starting in January. Like, so Dems now are freaking out after that bad debate performance, but at the same time, like they've known for months that Biden's not going to win the election. And they needed a moment
but keep in mind the bubble that you're in, the bubble you talked about. They lie to themselves and they believe it, and they're lied to by the White House.
Or they kind of, I think it's maybe a combination of them lying to themselves, but a lot of people knew what like the current state of Biden is, and like they, you know.
Yeah, but again, that's still insular. I've said this for a while. I think, let me just say this: if I'm wrong and Biden is the nominee, you're looking at Trump's second term. I'm confident on that. I just don't think Joe Biden's going to be the nominee. Okay? Now, it's literally up to him because unless they invoke the 25th Amendment and replace him with Kamala, and then, you know, they're already talking more and more Democrats. It's a slow drip until some point. Now, I don't know when their convention is. Is it in a week or two? It's not this coming week, right? Is it their convention? Do you know?
I thought it was in August because there's a Young Republicans event that's happening at the same time in DC.
Okay. But my
and
point
they wanted me to go to it, but I unfortunately cannot.
If the convention, let me just say this. Obviously, if the convention comes and goes and he comes out of it and he's the nominee, I think it's pretty much decided by that point. But there's many days. It's been coming, you know, you got the ridiculous Aaron Sorkin, replace him with Mitt Romney. You've got, you know, Kamala making more and more political appearances. There'll be bigger calls. White House people will start there. Here's how you do it if you're a Democrat, and it's probably happening already. The powers that be that were like, he's going to fucking lose. We got to get him off the ticket. You'll have a better Kamala. Much better. I don't know the answer to that. Probably not, but still better. And things can change. It is
better.
Again, but
it is better Biden, but it's not by much.
Correct, but that not by much can squeeze the difference. You know, they can reinvent her. The media will do their thing. She's not likable. They'll try to make her likable. The whole nine. But what you do right now is to the staffers who are not, you know, in their 70s and 80s, which is most of them. You tell them, that you'll never work in this town again unless if you keep doing what Jill and Hunter and you just abandon and I don't know, you have them call in sick. You don't show up. And all of a sudden, just the power structure around him. So it's just him and Jill and Hunter. And from there, you know, the peer pressure amongst it, it's like if he has time, I'm telling you, the Democrats have always been good about this, that they will do whatever it takes to get themselves over that finish line. So we shall see in the next few weeks, because we coming out of convention, we are unified. J.D. Vance is the vice presidential nominee, Senator Vance. I'm going to say this plainly, right out of the gate. I don't really agree with his economic policies from what I've heard. But if he can help cut spending, just cut spending, man, we're all good. All the other stuff, his foreign policy thoughts and his take on foreign policy, that's debatable. He's got some points, but it's the spending. If this becomes a big government, big spending second term of Trump cheered on by J.D. Vance, it's like, no, we have to cut back on the spending, full stop. And I'll be vocal about that because it's just the right thing to do and better policy. So I'm okay. Other than that, I'm okay with the J.D. Vance nomination to be vice president.
I didn't really I've been very vocal about this, did not really like J.D. Vance's 2022 Ohio Senate campaign. He underperformed all of the state Republicans in the state of Ohio by a lot. And Mike DeWine, yes, I understand that he's been a fixture in Ohio Republican politics for 30 years, but at the same time, you can't run only 6 above Tim Ryan in the state of Ohio when it's now a solid red state. It used to be swingy. It's not anymore. We need to be very clear about that. Trump's going to run probably real high in Ohio this year. And he under fundraised. The thing is Dems get mad, they get on Act Blue and they donate $5. The Republicans get mad, they go on Facebook and put 3 paragraphs about why Joe Biden sucks.
Yeah.
I don't do that because I don't care. I try to keep mine to why Joe Biden sucks on Twitter. But anyway, so I found the pick with J.D. Vance to be underwhelming. I think that he's lost a lot of weight, looks tanned and bready. I think that he does exemplify, how can I say this? As somebody who can identify with J.D. Vance's, and I'll be straightforward. My mom's family in southwestern Louisiana can very much be considered similar to the hillbilly culture of Appalachia. And I grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, which is not very far from that area. And, we own a farm outside of Lexington, which is not the same. Appalachia is very, very poor. The hillbilly culture is very ingrained there. I put hillbilly in quotes. They're not bad people. But there is a level of, this is going to come off really bad. I don't mean it in a very negative way because, again, I grew up with something similar.
I think I know what you're going to say, but we can get into it because it's not bad. Go ahead.
There's a lot of social rot there. It really, people don't believe that they can do better. There's a lot of complacency and social and cultural effects, and it's not always because of industry moving in and out of the areas.
Yeah.
In my personal opinion.
You're right. And Kevin Williamson, so when Hillbilly Elegy came out and was, a bestseller, Kevin Williamson actually wrote about this quite a bit years ago. And he said it's the culture. It's a cultural thing. It is
very cultural. Again, so I used to spend summers in southwestern Louisiana. My mom is the first person in her family that went to college. She is the only person in her immediate family between her parents and her siblings that has a master's degree. And my mom did this. My mom's the youngest, also, of 6 kids. I have an aunt who had 13. Okay. I don't talk about this a lot. And it is because of that complacency culture in which she was able to have 13 kids and the way that that was handled. My mom very much wanted to be not that. Mm-hmm. Okay. And my mom is, I like brag on my mom. My mom and I are very similar people. My mom has like a mental level intelligence. And she, when she was in school, in math, she was getting 100s and was asked to skip grades, but she didn't. And when she went to college, she graduated college in 3 years without any advanced placement or anything like that. And that was through hard work. My grandmother very much wanted my mom to go to college. Out of all of her kids, she pushed hardcore for my mom to do that. And my mom did it, and she struggled and sacrificed. My mom, for 10 years after she graduated college, lived with my grandmother in southwestern Louisiana and helped my aunt, who had 13 children, plus my other aunts who had children in the area, babysitting them and all this other stuff. When my mom got closer to 30 years old, she was not happy with her life because she was handling the problems of her own family. And that included a lot of abuse of alcohol, drugs, and mental illness. Because of the culture in these areas promote a complacency in those addictions and those problems. And so my grandmother told my mom that she needed to leave southwestern Louisiana and get a teaching job elsewhere, and that's what she did. And then she met my dad, and then she had a family of her own. And so my mom, when I say that she survived southwestern Louisiana, that is the case. When I used to spend summers down there, my sister and I were witness to a lot of behaviors that were not positive. And so my mom would have to very much tell us that this is not a good way to live. And my mom was very clear on, like, this is not the way that we're ever going to live. And we have to rise above. It's hard when you're 7 years old and your mom takes you to a family reunion and dresses you up in Polo Ralph Lauren and LL Bean in order to show off her 2 children who are in private school because she wants to show the rest of her family that she succeeded in life. So when I got my Kappa Delta bid, my mom immediately called her siblings and bragged about it because none of their, I do have cousins that actually, survived out of the poor situation in which my mom's family was in. But that was a big thing for my mom. The fact that, I'm college educated and going into grad school right now, that's a factor of pride. My dad's family doesn't have this same thing. Even though they're all farmers, they're all college educated farmers. In my dad's family, it is very, very different. And around Lexington, Kentucky, the culture, even with farm labor, is very, very different. And Appalachia is very similar to southwestern Louisiana. So with JD, I can relate to a lot of what he went through in Hillbilly Elegy. I do not always put maybe corrosive corporate policies into play here because that is a factor, but at the same time, you can stand up and say that you're not going to do this. You're not going to become addicted to drugs. You're going to make good decisions that promote, social mobility in your life. And, it's that for me, it's that, it is, even though Louisiana still has a lot of those populist things, when people talk to me about, I'm just Hugh Long or whatever. I don't relate to that. And I think that was a corrosive force in politics at the time. My mom is French speaking, Cajun. And a lot of people don't really understand the niche history of those people in southwestern Louisiana. The Democratic Party actively sought to ban French in schools in order to push assimilation, even though that Cajun French people in Louisiana were assimilated Americans. They just spoke a different language. And so, yeah, in Appalachia, it's a little bit different. They're all Scotch-Irish descent, so it's a little different.
So this is an interesting thing. So a couple things on that, and we'll wrap up. So Vance's take that the attitude coming out of Hillbilly Elegy and a lot of the factors is like some nefarious force outside of the culture is the primary factor for these people's circumstances. And I think, but your story, right? I don't agree with that either. Your story about your family and millions of other families, that it is the culture that they're in that is the primary factor, is way closer to the truth. So that's always been the knock on that book and his take, because when you get to a political level, this is what the Democrats do. It's real easy to blame outside circumstances for your own situation. But drug use, alcohol abuse, you can't fault like kids for it because they're in this shitty situation.
Was a huge factor for us. It is a big factor in Appalachia too. There's a part of his book, because I've read his book about Obama's cell phone. Like, everyone has a cell phone, but they're all on welfare.
Yeah.
That stuff's pretty heavily prevalent in southwestern Louisiana. The one thing I will say is, the people in Appalachia and the southwestern Louisiana, they're proud Americans. But within that, they need to really start believing in the American dream in a healthy way. And, looking towards upward mobility through education, which, I do agree with JD Vance on, that we as Americans, if we want to push people out of that mentality, I do agree with education spending on that forefront. Like, I do agree that, vocational based education is very, very good in those types of areas. So they have those skills. And we're seeing across the country that Gen Z especially is not going to college. They're going back to vocational practices in order to get those jobs that are like plumbers, construction workers, landscape artists, like all of those stuff, because those are still needed. And, actually they make a lot of money. But at the same time, for those who are stuck in this endless cycle because of the corrosive and very complacent social culture of these areas, I will say, when you look at the Democrats and you look at like Appalachia specifically, mining was a big industry in that area. Which political party decided to end through regulation a lot of that industry? It's not the Republicans. It's the Democrats and the EPA.
Yeah.
And, I've always been very clear that, like, if we're going to introduce nuclear energy and, green initiatives, that we still have to maintain that baseload. And that baseload needs to be done through coal, because it's a solid and very, base load type of energy. And, I think that their industry has gone from these areas, but you still see some good industry going back. And so we just need to ensure that these areas have some sort of pushing forward of social upward mobility. It is okay to tell these people that what they're doing in their families is wrong. And you should not be afraid to say it. So I do agree with JD Vance on that. I just don't agree with maybe the entire funding apparatus of the big government approach to handling the situation, other than maybe vocational.
Well, agreed, because unless we get our spending under control and dramatically reduce it, the federal government will consume too much capital in the market, and those plumbers and carpenters and electricians will have nothing to build because the economy will be frozen out. And you need a growing economy, people building things, borrowing money to build something that eventually makes money at not a sky-high interest rate, because we're borrowing, the federal government is borrowing all this money. You need to cut spending, or none of that even comes into play, or you'll have a bunch of plumbers, electricians, and carpenters, welders trained to do a craft without the opportunity for a job to put it into place. So they got to cut spending. We shall see what will happen in the election.
I think it's going to be, I will say, when it comes to JD Vance, I think that Donald Trump is going to force a deal on, if he's elected, force a deal on Ukraine spending. He's going to make JD Vance go help seal that deal. And it's going to be funny considering JD Vance's, and by the way, like, it is actually, I mean, in Ohio, there is a lot of aerospace industry there. So, like, the aerospace industry helps promote defense spending. So it's weird that a senator of Ohio would be railing against that, because defense spending helps our GDP.
That gets more into economic stuff, but anyway.
But at the same time, I think it's going to be funny when Trump makes JD Vance go into the Senate and cut a deal on defense spending. Right. Eventually, he's going to, be going back on his entire rhetoric for last year on Ukraine spending. I don't know. That's the kind of contradiction that I'm going to foresee, because, when people talk about Donald Trump being a dictator, and again, we're trying to end the episode, he really governed as a conservative Republican during his first term. It wasn't really anything out of the ordinary, except for January 6th at the end. And like, it's not, I don't think it'd be any different, to be quite honest.
And I have to say this, I got to tie this all together in a neat little bow. After his rally speeches where he's disavowing Project 2025, says he knows nothing about it, and I actually think he's correct, where he says in the debate that he wants to have Roe v. Wade go back to the states. All of these things, he's become way more liberal, which was always my concern of him from the outset, about a whole host of issues, and Republicans have largely been shut up about it. I mean, the fact that if you listen to what the man says, if you're Heathe Cox Richardson and her band of followers, you should be ecstatic, because he's just like, no, abortion goes back to the states, and they just don't want to believe it. They just don't want to believe. They want to believe in something that's just not going to happen.
Right. Well, like, isn't the evidence pointing to abortion rights winning on the state level? Aren't you happy about that? Like, they have
to believe this delusion that they're going to live in The Handmaid's Tale.
Like, isn't right? Like,
Project 2025 cuts the federal bureaucracy by a massive amount. Yet there's supposed to be you can't have an authoritarian takeover if you cut the federal government.
Right, like that's the thing. It's like, we're getting into another topic.
Yeah, when all right, we'll kill it there. But there's a lot more.
We're seeing the contradiction, because it's just like,
because we're normal and sane. All right. Thank you, everybody. Go to patreon.com/RINOpod, only $1 a month. Check out our, we go through the Project 2025 memes on our last episode. We're going to take a little break, as we always do every summer. So we'll be back as the summer rolls on in a few weeks. So we really appreciate everybody watching, and I guess we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.